Hi, everybody, and welcome to this third edition, this third conversation in our series of Nova 111 talks. Today with the jury's choice within the engineering and energy category of the Nova 111 list, and that's Lars Gustafsson, the Senior VP, Head of Service Portfolio and Delivery, Sales and Marketing at Scania. This conversation will last until 12:30 and will be divided into three parts. First, I will give you a very brief introduction to Nova and the Nova 111 list. And then we will focus on the reason why we're here, the conversation with Lars, of course. We will finish with the last 15 minutes with a Q&A where we'll try to answer your questions, and you can post them in the chat. But in order to do so, you need to create a YouTube profile. It only takes not even half a minute, but you need to do that in order to be able to post questions. And please post your questions also during our conversation, and we'll try to pick them up during the Q&A. Anyway, my name is Niklas Obel, and I work at Nova since March 2020 and leading our operations here in the Nordics. Many of you listeners are Nova members, others are not. And for those of you who are not familiar with Nova, Nova is a by invitation top talent network that was born in Sweden in 1997. Today we are over 12,000 members spread across mostly Europe. And out of those, 7,000 members are located in the Nordics. Our main objective at Nova is to connect and develop our members and accelerate their development and careers, and to help them reach their full potential and also the impact they have. And the Nova 111 list basically stems from our roots at Nova, as Nova was born from a talent list called the Nova 100. And in 2020, we decided it was time to launch a new kind of talent list, the Nova 111, which we also named, the Sweden's first evidence-based talent list, where we presented 10 stars in 11 categories. And the selection process was it was evidence-based and very rigorous. And these 10 stars in each category were selected in a process that involved IQ tests, personality tests, video interviews, and also each nominee was reviewed by a jury of industry experts as well as assessment professionals. All in all, over 55 jury members from HR directors to industry experts and so on. And the jury selected one outstanding talent in each category. And in this series of conversations, we will have the privilege to meet these superstars. So please enjoy this conversation with Lars Gustafsson, the winner and jury's choice of the engineering and energy vertical. Welcome, Lars.
Thanks a lot, Niklas. Thank you. Nice to be here.
Great. Let's start from the beginning. Would you mind introducing yourself and tell us a bit about your early years and where you're from and your upbringing?
Sure, absolutely. My name is Lars Gustafsson, as you said, working at Scania since a few years, basically all my professional life. I was born actually in the southern part of Sweden, in a town called Karlskrona. Then I moved around quite a lot with the family, based classical on my parents' work for the first years of my life, but basically grew up in another smaller town of Sweden called Norrköping on the east coast of Sweden. So basically, I lived for some 10, 11 years in Norrköping. So that's basically where I'm from. And then I have lived in Stockholm for quite some time after that. There's no standard childhood, right? But if there is one, at least in Sweden, I would guess mine is pretty much like that. One older brother, 2 years older, and I also grew up with my mom and dad. So that's pretty much the background from a geographical perspective.
All right. And what were your early passions and aspirations early on in life in Norrköping, maybe?
Yeah, when I think at my childhood in that perspective, I was not very different from any other child, I would say. Pretty much standard kid. I loved hanging out with my friends. When you grow up in a town like that, you love your bicycle. At least I did. Bicycling around with my friends, playing all different kinds of sports. So that was my biggest interest back then. Very much also in that context, if you may use the word standard, I was a standard kid. And I think, I mean, aspirations, I always been kind of quite ambitious and focused when it came to homework in school or when preparing for different exercises. I always stayed kind of focused and did the stuff before then enjoying the fun afterwards.
And later on, you went to study at RIT, or KTH, as it's called in Swedish, where you studied engineering. When did those thoughts sort of enter your mind in high school that this is what you wanted to study?
That's actually kind of funny. I think at my wedding, me and my wife's wedding some 8 years ago, actually my best man and one of the friends from back then, he made a speech, and he mentioned that already when I was like 10 years old, I talked about industrial management and engineering at the KTH. So I was quite
that's
clear
unique, I would say, yeah.
Yeah, a little bit premature kid, but I was kind of focused on that. And I mean, obviously there's a reason for that. My father studied the same thing, so there was some kind of connection to that, I would say. And that's I think the reason. And also I think it's kind of a broad education. I mean, not 100% sure about what area to work within, but I think, I mean, it suited me quite well. It gave a lot of opportunities for the working life then, or for the professional life then afterwards.
No, that's wonderful. And, you know, many times you talk about kids often aspiring to become doctors or so early on in life. But I mean, if you could have those aspirations early on in you know, in a positive way, that's wonderful to have that.
I only had one aspiration, sorry to interrupt Niklas, before that, and that was like when I was 7 or 8. Then the aim was to become a truck driver, and also that, I mean, I got my truck driver's license some 10, 11 years ago, so also that is kind of fulfilled.
That's good. So you could basically fulfill those dreams pretty early on, and also start working then at Scania, as we're gonna come into here. You right after you know, your engineering studies that you completed faster than usual. You started within Scania, and did that also come from your then, you know, aspiration in driving trucks, or how come you ended up at Scania into their trainee program within global purchasing?
Yeah, partly. I mean, partly that was actually a connection. I mean, since I was a child, I've always liked trucks. I mean, big, impressive products and interesting thing. And then when I did my studies, I spent one summer with a summer internship at Scania. And I really, I think that was back in 2008. I really liked the company. I mean, we got this opportunity to work in the production line, but also see different areas of the company with some different lessons. And to me, what struck me when I was listening to all the different members from different parts of the company was, I mean, something we talked about, the family feeling at Scania. It was a really nice culture. People were kind, they were supportive, they had a nice tone towards each other, and that was something that that was close to my values, and that triggered me, and that's why I applied then for the trainee program.
Interesting. When we're talking about that, what other values would you say that you took up from your upbringing and so on, apart from the thing that you just mentioned here, and how has those values sort of, you know, formed important decisions that you've made, apart from the ones that you just told us about?
I think I've always been, I mean, I think that the team part for me, that has been really important, either if it's in sports, or if it's a group exercise in school, or if it's at, I mean, the Master of Science studies. Then, I mean, you quite soon realize that people have different competencies and strengths, right? And you said that I finished a bit earlier. I mean, that was not based on me. That was based on that I found a really good network of people, a team to work with. And I mean, it was ridiculous in the end of the years how quick we could delegate different tasks in between us and finalize group exercises really quick. So I think, and when I look back, I mean, in the perspective of my childhood, I think that kind of team spirit and do it together. You should not, I mean, you're not on your own. Let's utilize a group of people that's more fun and that's more developing and that gives a better result. That is something that has really, I mean, in retrospect perspective, I've not seen it back then, but I think now it has really, I mean, affected my way of working and my, at least my ambition on how to act as a leader or manager now.
Yeah, I wanted to come into that because, when I listened to you before and we talked and so on, it's obvious that, you have a very people-oriented, I wouldn't say management style because I haven't seen that in practice, but at least, that is obviously something that's very important to you when you talk about leadership and so on. Can you share a bit about that how you think in terms of the people component in getting things done from a leader perspective?
Mm. I think that is really key, and from several different perspectives. I think, I mean, for what many people, I mean, in the Nova network and equally are working within. I mean, it's quite complex business and complex technology, and things goes faster and faster. And it's, I mean, if you're supposed to bring all the information to one single source and take those decisions in a very few people's mind, I mean, that's that's impossible, and that will just be slow. So I think, I mean, from a pure survival of a company perspective, it's super important to delegate as much as possible, bring the information to the right level in the organization, and make sure that the people can take the right decision in the organization then. And that is also, I mean, I think my generation or younger professionals, we kind of demand that. We want to have the right development and feel that we get trust and we get mandate, we get the right information and prerequisites, and then we can move on. Of course, with the right support going forward and bouncing ideas. Sometimes you will fail and fall, and then someone will help you to stand up again and continue and learn from that. And I think also from the kind of people perspective or the employee or me as a person, I think that's also what's fun. And then, I mean, being a generalist like myself, I would argue that I'm not specifically good at anything. Then it's a pure source of survival for me as well. I work together with other people to solve the complex questions. I mean, that's the fun part, and that's the thing that brings the best result.
Mm. How do you work at Scania as an organization, but also how do you work specifically in your leadership role in terms of making sure that you develop these? Just like you say, I mean, this young generation of people coming up, I mean, they may not have the same kind of patience in terms of sticking around in the same place unless they have, the good fortune of getting a very, very good development. How do you work with that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think, I mean, I have now entered an organization with some 250 people and also some 25 group managers, and then some 6 or 7 section managers on top. And then I mean, it's clearly another thing to lead through other managers and through other leaders. And then it's so important with a lot of communication and create a clear, I mean, on the overall picture, create a clear journey and direction. What journey are we upon? But then also, I mean, try to have this as much as possible. This, I mean, management by walking around, I would almost call it. Try to be present, just to listen and understand what is going on. I think that is really key. Of course, that has been a big challenge the last 1.5 year working in a to a large extent from home office. So I think that's a challenge, but clearly so that, I mean, trying to be close to the employees and be a bouncing partner, I think that's really, really important.
Do you also have some kind of like structured upskilling or reskilling or development sessions for people in your organization, and how do you work with that?
We have a lot of trainings. I mean, at Scania, we're quite a big company, 53,000 employees, of which 17,000 are in Södertälje based, just south of Stockholm. So we have a Scania Academy set up where we train employees and try to do a lot on that side. But I think, to me, the key thing for learning or reskilling or development, I mean, it's having the guts or the culture to really give trust and mandate and give challenging tasks to people in the organization early on. I got that early on in my career, and it was tough sometimes, but that was fun and that was developing. And then I learned how to take on bigger challenges as well. And I mean, that could be scary some to one extent, but the good thing in a sound company culture, then you feel that even though it's scary, then you feel that you have someone that will support you when it gets really tough, because it will, from time to another, it will be really tough, and then you need a team of more experienced colleagues or other friends or colleagues to really support you. So I think if you feel that safety and if you feel the possibility to get bigger tasks, then I think it comes naturally, also based on your personal interest. Then what is the most important task or direction for you to develop within in that phase of your career?
Yeah. So basically what you're saying is that the most important part of your development should come from sort of on the job and in your everyday tasks, and then of course you can sort of boost it through an academy or focus the up or reskilling things, but it needs to be incorporated into your everyday mission, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. And then I mean, put in some customer. I mean, we're obsessed about the customer at Scania since long. I mean, put in some customer visits about that, understanding the real life operation makes it even more fun, and you see the red thread. I think that's kind of the way.
Would you say this has been the case for you as well? I mean, when we're looking at top talented people like yourselves, we see that people on average stick around for a little less than 3 years at one employer, which is quite a short time, to be honest. But you've been at Scania for 11 years. Tell us about that. I mean, it's quite unique in that sense, looking at your generation to stay on for that kind of years. Well, tell us about your development. You've had a lot of different roles, and you've obviously made a really impressive career during those years. But tell us a bit about how it is doing that kind of journey in a huge organization like Scania.
It feels so weird, because when I started as a management trainee, I was looking at these people that had some like 10, 11, 12 years in the company. They were skilled. They knew quite a lot. I mean, they had a lot of experience, and it feels like I've been in the company for 24 months roughly. So I mean, time really flies. But I mean, to me, it comes back to, I usually say, and it's only partly a joke, I will retire in this company. I really love the culture, and that is really key for me. You feel that the culture is in line, and the values of the company is in line with your own values, and you feel that we try to take good care of each other, and we try to develop each other, and that kind of foundation. I mean, it's not just Scania. You see that in many different companies. But when you feel a good match on that side, I mean, then it's a perfect base. So that's the first and most important thing. And then second, I mean, for me, as you mentioned, I had it's my 8th position in these 11 years. So I have the possibility, and some have been very close to each other, of course, but I had the possibility to always get a new challenge and grow internally. Almost, you have kind of when you enter a position, first you're extremely confused. Then you feel that you start to get traction and you learn a lot and have a really steep development curve. But then after some time, you feel that flattens out a bit. At least that is my regular learning curve. And to me, always just before that flattening out period, I have received a new challenge and jumped on something new, which has really, continued to develop me. And also staying in the same company, you see that these 8 positions, you build on one another, right? You bring the network, you bring the learnings about the questions on, and you can really get a better result by the experience from your previous position. And that is also, for a people person, that's also fun to utilize that network internally.
How does Scania as an organization go about that? Because I mean, it really is an amazing way of developing as a professional, as a manager, of just like you say, apart from having quite a lot of time spent in that confusion phase and traction phase before moving on to the next role. But seriously though, I mean, it's really amazing to be given all those opportunities. Is there a Scania way of doing that, or have you navigated in the Scania organization in any special way to be given those opportunities?
A really good question. I would argue that it is many senior managers at Scania, looking at our executive board, for example, it could be a strength, but also a weakness, but I think it's mainly a strength. They have stayed for a very, very long time in the company, and they have themselves done that journey and know how important it is to get different perspectives on questions and build on the network. So we have a culture where senior leaders really try to promote and support people to do that kind of journey. I think in the past it has been a bit in each and every silo. Have you been in production and logistics? Then you get that kind of journey in that stream, research and development in that stream, commercial operations in that stream. And I think we need to work, and we're trying to do that a much more on a flow perspective, jumping in between different areas. I started with purchasing, working within the industrial systems, R&D, suppliers, production, then corporate strategy, see bits and pieces of everything. Now within sales and marketing, closer to the commercial part of the organization. And you quite soon realize that there's a lot of internal discussions in a big company, and all people, they're trying to do the best from their perspective. And you need to have several different hats on your head, right? One is your current position. One is the hat of your colleague or counterpart in the discussion, and strives for some kind of win-win. And have you seen different perspectives in the different companies? It's easier to try to create that win-win situation, because we all strive for improved customer value in the end, in the same bigger flow. So I think that's a part of the culture. I've had the luxury to have had good luxury or luck. I'm not sure what it is, but having good managers supporting that kind of movement. And I try to be the same kind of leader. I have my a list and my bigger and bigger list of people that I'm thinking of, and trying to, not only my direct reports, people in various parts of the organization, where I try to find a suitable career path or challenges, not in my organization, but bounce ideas on how they can develop. I think that's really key, and I try to take some time to do that, even though it's always too short a time.
That's actually really an amazing way to look at things in a very large and complex organization. Like you say, there might be a lot of conflicting views on things, but it's normally just because you come from you have a different perspective on how you see the world. And of course, if you can early on in your career get the opportunity to be in a lot of different functions and so on, you will learn to see the world from those different perspectives and make the most of it. For the company as such. I think many people, me included, at least early on in my career, I could sometimes feel that it could be sort of less interesting and less complicated to do a career in a very big company. But as I've at least matured and worked with a lot of giant organizations, and also worked in some giant organizations, I've come to realize that it's a very complex world with lots of stakeholders and so on, and in the very important decisions, many people with those different perspectives are involved as well. How do you what has been your learnings in terms of tackle that kind of complexity and involving the right kind of people, managing stakeholders and so on?
Good. I think that is, one part of that answer is the discussion we just had. If you rotate people to different positions, that would be a good momentum, and then you will bring the people that are good, they will develop even further, and then they might come back again with new perspectives. I usually say that when a person leaves my management team to another part of Scania, that's a win for that person, a new challenge. It's a win for the new part of the organization. They get a great person, but also a win for the current organization with a good speaking partner in the new function, because everything is connected in the end. And I think it's the same thing. I mean, when you scale this up, Scania, 53,000 employees, part of Traton, 150, roughly 1,000 employees, part of the Volkswagen group close to 700,000 employees. That's quite big numbers, right? It's difficult to know the name of everybody. And when I've been working at strategy and business development, I worked a lot towards the Traton group and that perspective and how to get alignment. And I truly believe it takes some more time in the beginning to get people aligned around a challenge, but you need to do that, especially in the kind of Scandinavian company culture. You need to get aligned. You need, as an employee, to understand the why. Why are we doing this? Not just that you should do this task because your manager says it. You need to understand why. And then when you do that, and when you have that cross-functional alignment, then you get real traction. Not just the first 6 or 12 months, but you get lasting traction. So I think I really try to do that and spend the time and get my team to spend the time with the cross-functional alignment. That is really key in these big international companies to get tractions, because it's quite easy to create a quick win that eventually then will die. And we have too many of those initiatives. But to spend time, get the different stakeholders to buy in, get the employees to feel understanding of the why, then you get the result in the end.
Yeah, that's so important things that you mentioned there. Taking a step, looking outside of Scania, it's just so great to hear that basically you found your place and you did it from day one in your career. But if you're looking outside of Scania and what other industries and companies get your attention and I mean, if you wouldn't be at Scania, basically, what other companies, industries would motivate you?
Good question. I mean, as mentioned in the beginning, I'm quite kind of a generalist. I think I like to work with people. I like to work in a flow, and that, of course, I could find in many areas as long as I get the right match with the company culture. So there's a lot, but I also think that, I mean, Scania, yes, we have been a producer of trucks and buses, but it's so much more. I mean, the transport industry and change that into a sustainable part of the society, that is not just a heavy automotive producer task. I mean, we talk about focus on the customer, but also on the customer's customer. And here we work a lot with other different companies, both, I mean, the transporter, but also it could be H&M, the buyer of transports, and it could also be the energy supplier and the infrastructure partners on the energy side. So you get to see the strength of this network from many different perspectives. So absolutely, there's a lot of fun things to do, but I guess, I mean, if I was not here, then I would be a truck driver. Coming back to the initial starting point.
So it starts and finishes in a Scania truck. No matter what.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's great. Speaking about, I mean, when you talk about the customer and so on, and also lifting our perspective a bit, maybe into what's happening in the industry, basically in the transportation industry, and connecting that to the focus on renewables and so on. What do you see the future holds, both in a shorter term and in a longer term perspective, when it comes to the development there, with everything from, I don't know, self-driving vehicles. We talked about just before we got on air here about connected vehicles and sometimes the problems in terms of when the connectivity is lost from the network supplier. But what do you see? What do you see the industry and the future of the industry holds?
Yeah, connectivity loss, that would have never happened to Scania, but I heard that in some other brands, right? That they have that problem. No, but seriously, I think it's an kind of an amazing period to be in the transport industry. As you say, I mean, we have autonomous vehicles, and that we have already today. I mean, we run them in confined areas, mines and harbors already today. So the technology is clearly there. We have autonomous autonomous long haulage trucks driving on the highway in between Södertälje and Jönköping, 250 kilometers daily in Scania, not daily in Sweden. Not many people know that, but we run autonomous vehicles with a safety driver ready, but still autonomous vehicles daily on public highway.
Wow, I didn't know that myself.
It's really cool. The future is here, basically. That's the short message. So on the but it will of course take some time before we have full autonomous vehicles in the most difficult situation. It's much easier in a confined area where you know the layout, etc., and it's easier to predict and plan. But that's super interesting. The transition to electrified vehicles, it's so impressive to see how quickly that shift or that transition will be. That is really accelerating here and now. And the products from us and the competitors in the business, I mean, it's amazing to see how quick that will be. It needs a lot of work with policymakers and the infrastructure partners to get the complete flow. It's not enough with a vehicle. You need a system to be able to charge the vehicles and have optimized transport. So that's also super interesting. But then coming back a bit more to my area, I mean, we have at Scania since 2011, so 10 years ago, all our vehicles that we sell, they are connected. So we have 550,000 connected trucks, buses, and industrial and marine engines. That gathers a lot of information. Every 30 seconds, we get a signal about the position, for example. So we get a massive amount of information from these 550,000 connected vehicles. And that's, I mean, the possibility to work with that data, I mean, it's difficult to grasp, but when we step by start to do this now, which we have that journey we're on to, that's super interesting. It could be a predictive and preventive maintenance and planning of repair, so that we change the component exactly the right time, not after 30,000 kilometers, but at exactly right time. That's good from a sustainability perspective. That's good from a cost perspective, but also, most importantly, perhaps from a planning perspective for the customer. They will not have the reduced uptime. They will be able to drive without stops. So there's a lot to be done here in this part of the chain.
Yeah, that's just like you say. I mean, when you take that scale, like say with those 550,000, and you optimize one part, just the example you just mentioned, I mean, I suppose it will have a huge impact. All in all, are there any other areas that you see? That was one example. Any other examples that, you know, for us mortals who are not part of that industry, that we just don't see happening, but where you see the opportunities?
But I think the main drivers are really the autonomous vehicles, the electrified vehicles, and then the digitalization, or how to use connectivity. And I mean, also to bring that into that information into decisions. When the COVID-19 outbreak happened early 2020, we used the information. We have these 550,000 connected vehicles globally. So we started a transport index based on that information, and then we could follow the transportation activity in different countries and in different segments and boil that down. So we could, for example, see, we follow that daily and send that information to the full company. We could see that activity level in China was super low in February 2020 when there was a lockdown. Still until 12th of March, really high in Europe. Then China started to come back in beginning of March, and Europe dropped down. And we could see the different trends in real life in the different countries. Spain, France, with Italy with more severe lockdown, it reduced a lot more. Sweden, quite kind of stable. UK a bit more as half a phase later on. And then you saw that kind of different phases in Latin America, China, Europe throughout 2020. And that is, of course, a good source for decisions about planning or such things. So super interesting possibilities.
Yeah, of course, it's super interesting with having that kind of data at hand. I'm sorry to say that they are drilling here in our property somewhere. That's why I've tried to mute and unmute so we don't get too disturbed. But going from that strategic perspective of the industry and back to you, Lars. I mean, you're also a father of two and have combined parental leave and a very fast track career. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Managing being a father and a professional and manager at the same time.
Yeah, that's clearly a challenge. And I also have my wife, Marie. She studied the same thing and was also on the list in engineering and energy vertical, by the way, for Nova 111. And she is the clever one of us. And so we are both ambitious in our careers. So it's clearly a challenge to get the things together. I think we managed to cope with work and most importantly, family. Our two children, 3 and 6 years old by now. And then, of course, the buckets you carve out time from is training. You do much enough to stay focused. And of course, the friends bucket. I mean, we used to hang out a lot with friends. You don't really have that time, unfortunately, now, but it's more quality time when you meet. So clearly, it is really a challenge. But it's so fun to be with the children, and I'm super happy to have had the possibility also from a Scania perspective to be on support, not only to be, but to be supported to be on parental leaves. I was promoted both times when I went on parental leave.
Yeah, and that's of course an amazing example of how you can combine them. You mentioned some examples that you have to cut down on some things, like you say. I mean, basically we only have 24 hours regardless what we have at hand. But how do you can you give us some more examples in terms of how you manage to balance work and family life, especially with, like you say, your wife being quite the successful in her career as well, and both of you making the list, which is just wonderful. But tell us a little bit more how you do that.
Yeah, we are both are engineers, so we make when we're shopping for food, for example, then we have standard lists and then do the online shopping on the big list or the small list. So it takes as little time as possible, and then you get it delivered to home. Fantastic digital solutions. So that standard shopping, it's super time effective, at least. Perhaps you get into a certain routine, but it's time effective. And then with small children and the battle in the morning to get them to preschool and daycare, then we every Sunday we prepare the clothes in buckets for both the daughter and the son, so that we have that prepared for every morning, so that you don't have that struggle every morning. You have it prepared. It saves 90 seconds each morning, but those 90 seconds are quite important. So every small little piece is important. And then, of course, we have the luxury of having my parents. They are senior citizens. They live in Stockholm, so and also my wife's parents sometimes they support with picking up at daycare and school, and that's also extra luxury to have that possibility.
Yeah, I think especially for possible international listeners, the Swedish model, of course, is that you do a lot yourself, and of course we have a great support from daycare centers and so on. But yeah, it's just amazing to have those examples. And like you say, when the kids are that age, I can remember that myself. Look, those 90 seconds, they are very valuable.
Yeah, it feels a bit ridiculous, but that's life, actually.
Yeah, and it's also the energy it saves from having to wrestle with your youngsters. Exactly. Hey, success and having those kinds of management roles that you have also comes at the price of setbacks and failures. Can you share some examples of your most memorable setbacks or mistakes, and what those were and what you learned from that as well?
Good one. I think to me, I don't have that many. Of course, I do a lot of stuff wrong, and I could do it better all the time. But when I think on this, at least 11 years in my professional life, I don't recognize or recall that many major things, and I think that boils down to the culture I was talking about. We at Scania, we have an expression that we use often. We love deviations, and what does that mean then? Yeah, if if you fail or something does not go according to plan, then that's life. Let's stand up again. Let's learn from it, so that we don't repeat the same mistake. But it's not really a big thing. And then you come back to, I have had some situations when I was a purchaser and didn't really, or my first manager position at purchasing, and didn't really, do the things in a proper way. But I will always had support and someone helping me in the tough situation or doing it as a team. And that is also what I try to kind of give back or act as myself as a leader. So I think if you have the right culture, it's not a big thing, then it's actually a good thing. You could learn from it and improve.
And how do you foster that culture, and what do you tell your employees? I mean, it's so great to hear. I mean, this is wonderful. And I think this is, if you look at high performing cultures, regardless of industry, you will see a lot of the same components there. But how do you, for example, what do you tell a new employee or somebody that comes directly into a trainee position, whatever? Like, what do you expect of them in terms of at least acknowledging their mistakes so that they can be helped out, and so on and so forth?
Yeah, I think it's very much about these classical things. Transparency, openness, dare to express where you stand, because all people are, and myself, we're occupied in a lot of different stuff. So it's difficult to sense the signals and be brave enough and ask for that support, and then you will really get it. So I think if it's a sound culture, you could also, help yourself to get that support. I guess that's what I'm after. But then, of course, as a leader, you try to do your best to capture those signals and really have an open and transparent culture where you talk about the mistakes or the things that are not fully according to plan. Coming back to a complex world, we will do mistakes all the time, all of us. Otherwise, it would be too easy and we would do something wrong, I would say.
No, exactly. Making mistakes is something that you cannot take out of the equation, but it's like you say, it's how you handle that and how you build a stronger person and individual through that and through the way you're handling it, basically. So very interesting to hear how you managed to put that into your culture. So if you would give your young self, or maybe other young hungry professionals who are early in their careers, what kind of advice would you give them in order to help them develop and grow and reach their full potential?
Yeah, good one. I think, there's a classical expression that you should find a good manager. I think, that's a bit too narrow, but you should find a place to do stuff, your work or your task on a daily level in a context where you feel that is aligned with your values and the principles that you would like to follow. So I think that is really, really important, because then you will feel the safety and you will be able to develop yourself, challenge yourself, and grow. So I think take a step back and look. What kind of context will I enter in my first positions, and is that really aligned with what I believe in? I think that is super important, because otherwise, coming back to are we in for quick wins or the long run? I think that's how you find a good long run development where it's fun and you get the challenging task and develop.
And I think that's a very good advice to people who are early in their career. Do you have any ideas on how you do that due diligence, basically, as coming right out of school and so on? Sometimes it can be so difficult to really look through those appealing phrases and the selling discussions in interviews and so on. How do you actually make sure that the company or organization that you might be heading into actually share those values of yours?
Yeah, and first of all, I think it's important to see that you not only get one chance to do that. If it's not right the first time, just pick another chance and start on a new thing. But it comes back to, as you say, yes, you are try to get into as many different situations or perspectives as possible, because then after a period, the first touch points, then you're kind of overwhelmed of what you see. But after some times, you start to see through the fog, or you start to see the real thing behind it. And I think then at least to me, then it starts to be about what feeling do I get? I mean, what kind of gut feeling do I get about this person or this organization? All these, not the big things, but all these small things in between the lines. Is that really what I would like to be a part of for many hours every day?
Yeah. No, that's great advice. Before we head into the Q&A, I also have just a quick question on what book or author has had the biggest impact on you and that you could recommend to other people.
When I was really young, the series of book from Vilhelm Moberg, the Emigrants, is that the name in English, perhaps?
Yeah.
Something in that. That's captured me. It's the history and legacy where we come from, but also a bold journey to bring on. And many people are on that journey. As we speak today. You get respect for that kind of journeys, right? And I think you could always also do the transition into, how do you manage to do that journey, both the physical movement, but most importantly also from us, social context. And I think that family feeling and that team spirit, I guess that's the key how to do it and survive and come out as a full person.
That's a brilliant reflection on a brilliant series of books. Actually, I also loved them when I was younger. Vilhelm Moberg, Utvandrarna. Needs to be read in Swedish. No, I'm just kidding. For those international listeners, they're of course translated to other languages, but really interesting. So let's move into the Q&A here, so everybody who hasn't yet posted their questions, please do so. We have one question from Amanda. That's a bit related to the one that we talked about in terms of you do in your career, you do have a second chance if you don't find yourself in the right position in the first company that you're joining or where you're at right now. But what would you recommend someone who is in the beginning of their career to stay at the same company or to change after a couple of years is the question.
I think the first, as long as you feel what we've been into quite a lot with the values. If you feel a good match, then of course, then you should try. Then you have a good starting point. And then, depending on what company, of course, but many companies, if it's a bigger company with more than a few hundred employees, I think then you have local adaptations of the company culture. It's not one company culture. That company culture to me is an area, and then you see different teams are on different parts of that area, still within the same culture, but different adaptations. And it might be so that you are within the same area, but the team is not within the exact spot where your sweet spot is. So then explore internally, discuss with other people. Reach out, talk to people you don't know in the company. How is it in your department or in your area, and what do you like about that and not. So I think explore that before jump on the next train. I think that's really important. All people like to talk about themselves and their journey, right? And have more problems to listen and actually listen for real to other people, but reach out to people and get more information. I think that's a good advice.
That's a great advice. Could you also give some very concrete example on how you could do that? I think people early on in their careers can sometimes be a bit shy in terms of taking those kind of contacts and so on. You being more experienced, can you give the listeners some kind of very practical advice on how you could actually do that?
Yeah, I would say, super simple. It's one email or Teams message or whatever function you choose away. And it's if you contact a senior manager or similar on a company and you don't get a reply and you don't get someone that is interested in developing yourself, I think then, at least to me, then you might have a challenge in the company culture, because I mean, the senior leaders, they are in the end of the day at the company in order to develop people, and by doing that develop business or technology or customer value. So that's, I mean, reaching out just to frame some questions and elaborate about them, that's good development for yourself, but also a good pressure test on the culture, what the company stands for and what the leader stands for. And of course, doesn't have to be senior leaders. It could be all these, super important informal leaders, the informal leaders that you have in an organization that are super solid people that can really help you and bounce ideas.
Yeah. Something we haven't talked to so far is the international perspective. Like in a global company like Scania, how important is it to actually go work in other markets than your own?
Good one. That was, I mean, looking back a bit, then the classical path was that you spent, we have a European production system and we have a Latin American production system. So you should spend some years within the Sao Paulo operations and then bounce back, or spend some years at all the different sales companies we have globally. I think now being a part of Traton and the Volkswagen Group, the connection to the, on the one hand, the German organization is much stronger, but also the global context. We've become super global as a company, moving out from just Europe and Brazil to very much a global company. And with the boost we have had in the digitalization, especially the last period of time, you get that international flavor every day and all day. So I think it's super important to understand different cultures, but your daily operations are much more international now than only 5 years ago. Big change, I would say.
So basically, you can see that at least at Scania that those sort of expat roles or so on, or where it's like more or less required of you to have an interesting career, is not really the same thing after given the digitalization and the opportunities it provides in terms of working integrated without actually being abroad.
Yeah, I would say it like this. I mean, it's still, previously it was kind of mandatory, kind of black or white. Now it's super good, and it's a super good development curve and something that most people do, and also something that most people enjoy, and something that is, I mean, positive about an opportunity within these kind of companies. And so I think, I mean, still important, and also important to, as we have been into as well, not only, I mean, if you work in the sales organization centrally and then you work in the sales organization locally, then you know a lot about sales from a global perspective, but also be a part of different parts of the supply chain and see different perspectives. That's also important, and that we talk about, I mean, on the senior positions, to have been a part and been working in operations in different countries, but also in different areas within the company. So there are several different perspectives in that sense.
Yeah. Here we have a very, very interesting, I think, question from the audience. It says, thanks for a great talk. It's from Nonne87. Given your transition into many different roles, it would be interesting to hear you speak a bit more about how one effectively take on a new role. That's a very good question.
Yeah. Don't have too much respect, right? Don't see the difficulties and the hurdles. If I have done that, I would not have changed into my 8 roles within this period of time. I think, I mean, be a bit naive. Jump into the water, start to swim. I mean, learn, and by talking to people that are in that context, and then you will soon see that the kind of experience or the competencies or capabilities, whatever you call it, that you have, that will be good enough, and you will start to get result as well. So, I mean, to have too much of respect and think things through in the beginning, that is just theoretical for me. Just do it, and then you will learn a lot. And also coming back to, to do that, that's a risk. and you need to have a network or a surrounding that supports you, and that's the place you want to be in and develop. So good question, but more act than thinking. I guess that's the short reply.
I think that's a wonderful way to end this great conversation, Lars. Just do it, jump in, and don't be afraid. I want to thank you so much for sharing your perspectives of a really successful career within a major company and corporation, and for sharing your very, very good thoughts. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Niklas.